Good morning, good afternoon, people. I will be starting the next best practice event in a minute's time. I'm just going to give a few more people a minute to join the session. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for joining the session today. Apologies straight away. I see the first slide actually says live chat, but this is the last session in the series, and I'm actually covering reporting today. So thank you all for joining. Hopefully you've all got in okay and managed to join the phone. Just to let you know, the session today will be recorded, so it will be available on our webpage as well at the end of this. If you have any questions at all as we're going through the slides today, please do put them into the chat screen, and I'll make sure that we try and answer as much as possible at the end of the session. So this is covering Reporting 101. So it's obviously a very vast area to cover here. So there's quite a few areas that we'll be going through today. So the topic itself was called Reporting What's in There. So today's session will be covering through real-time stats, historical reporting, a couple of other areas as well, which are very useful in contact center utilization tools. So there's a couple of other things in here which I think underused in some areas, which we'll be covering. We'll also then go into knowledge reports, concierge reports, and if we have time, we'll also cover what we call event broadcasting. So obviously, our report suite itself is very big with what we've actually got in place there, but I'll try and get as much detail as I can across to you of typically what I see other customers use, but also how you can actually make it better for yourselves as well to start utilizing the kind of tools that you've already got in place here. So we're going to start off with the real-time stat screen. So I'm sure you're all very familiar with what's available in here. And as you can see on the screen, this is kind of a typical view of what we see being covered on a real-time stat screen itself. Now, this is really good to start using. It's typically something which I see set up by a lot of our customers out there who have something like this in place. It looks great, but then from day one, they maybe have a few fields or they put too many fields in there. Now, this is useful in many areas. Obviously, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, supervisors can monitor all aspects of the contact center in real time. There are also audio alerts. So if something hits a threshold, so for example, here on this screen, if you see that the number of agents responsible is actually lower than it should be, so maybe here on the top left-hand side, you'll see ARESP, so that's agents responsible. If you see that the threshold is actually lower, we can send an audio alert to make you aware that something has actually taken place. What we don't want you to do is having to stare at this screen all day. So we're optimizing it to make sure that it's applicable for what your needs are within your contact center. And the great thing here is with the Moxie solution is that this can actually be modified and created differently per supervisor. Because our agent console will actually let you modify the workspace, so edit the workspace and save them, you can have your own layout. If it's something like you can see on my screen at the moment, then perfect, you can do that. But if someone else in another team wants something differently, you can also do that as well. The actual dashboards themselves provide access to relevant information, as you can see on my screen, and supervisors can be limited to only view reports for their own team and or users as well. So we do have the capabilities here to make sure that if I was logging into a platform and I was working for the Moxie department, I would only see relevant information which is applicable for my team, rather than seeing the figures for every single department out there. Real-time data. So the main key area here is to start using them. As I say, when I'm typically going around and viewing what the supervisors are actually doing with these consoles, I'll typically see them set up and saved, but they don't tend to keep going back to them and using them day in, day out. Now, I'm not asking for supervisors to start staring at these screens every single day to see what's going on, but if you set them up correctly, then you can use these as a quick information glance. You'll go in there, you'll have a quick look, and then you'll make a change. So maybe you need more agents logged in, or maybe you just need to start concentrating on one of the chat queues or one of the mailboxes. So the goal is to allow the contact center to see what is happening in real time. That's everyone's goal with regards to real-time data. Now, a couple of tips that I generally put forward here is pick colors and change the names to something more relevant. On the previous screen, you would have seen that I had a few very quick names in place on the RealTime dashboard. What you can actually do here is on the right-hand side on that box that I have displayed on the screen, you'll see in the field properties section, you can actually change that display name. So feel free to change those names to something a bit more applicable as well. But also use the color thresholds as well that you can see to the right-hand side of that. So you'll see a minimum of 1, if that's the number of chats in queue or emails in mailbox. You could say that if there's a minimum of 10, that's great, we'll have that go green. If it's over that threshold, then let's make it go red so that we're aware when we're actually staring at that screen, or when we're looking quickly at that screen to see what's relevant for us. Also, the second tip is to use it or lose it. If it's not relevant, then remove that field. Something else that I typically see is that we see lots of data on one screen. So for example here, if you're looking at mailboxes or agent information, then we do typically see that every single field is used within each of those areas. If it's not relevant for the information piece you need, then quickly remove it. Just have that data which is available in there, because obviously there's historical reports as well to back up the data that you're actually using at that time. Now, the data that you can actually see in here is based on system stats, agent stats, mailbox stats, department stats, and service line stats. And each one of those provides different information snippets for you to get a gauge of what's actually happening. So I'd suggest that have a look through each of those, create a screen for yourselves which is relevant for you, and just make sure that you're picking those relevant fields when you're moving forward. You can save those and you can make sure that it's relevant for you or the rest of your team. Obviously, we're going to touch on each of these areas. As I mentioned, there is a lot of information in each of these pieces. Now, historical reporting is immense, pretty immense with regards to what we have available in here. And what you can actually see on my screen at the moment is just some information snippets. And again, this is the different type of data that we do have available in each of our reports. So these are all the different ways that you can actually provide data. It could be system data. So system data is information on everything that's taken place. You have agent data, so it's applicable against all the agents logging in. Service line, which is obviously chat, mailbox data, mailbox. You have also disposition data and category data in here as well. There are a couple of actually information pieces there that I don't typically see being used day in, day out, but they're very great, they're very good pieces of information as well to provide in reports. And the reason being is that obviously disposition data is useful for the type of chat conversation that's taking place. So if you force that as mandatory for your agents, you can typically see the type of conversations that you're having within your call center as well. But also email category data. The type of emails that are actually generally sending out and the type of replies that are actually sending out can be based on the categories that the agents are actually adding. So again, they're pretty useful pieces of information that you can have in here as well. So the report builder, as it says on the right-hand side of the screen, offers an easy-to-use interface for building custom reports. And also the report builder offers options to build on-the-fly reports for a variety of data options, including agents, as I've mentioned, service line camera responses, and also survey data. And I'll be touching on that as we're going through this again today. But the next few screens that you'll see in place here are actually typical, the basis of a typical setup for historical reports. And the reason why I'm going to go through this in a bit more detail is because we do have, as I mentioned at the start of the historical report section here, we do have reports which are offered out of the box. So if I were to click on the open option that you can see on the tab above the report here, there are standard reports that we do have available in here. But typically what I see is that because it's so easy to use our interface, that most or nearly all of our customers would actually click on new and create these reports from scratch. So an example here is that once we're happy and familiar with the different types of data that we've got in place, we would then select, so for example here, if it's a questionnaire or a particular service line or a mailbox, we would then select the ones which are applicable for this report. So you can select specific elements to include. At this point, it could be agents, it could be service lines, it could be mailboxes, it could be a survey that you can have in place here. You can then select a date range as well. Now this range can be set from today to yesterday, year to date to other. You could also on this screen as well set a specific date that you've got in place. So for example, if I wanted just 2 days of this week, so for example here, if I wanted the 15th to the 16th, or the 15th to the 17th on this report, then I could actually do that. I can pick specific points in time. I could also change that time period. If there's a certain date, or so if I was looking at today's information, I could also change that timer on here to make sure that I'm looking at a specific time in that journey. So it's a great way of looking at maybe scheduling options for your agents, but also to look at trends of when your customers are typically sending in emails or your busy times for mailboxes, but also when they're entering queues for chats as well. There are lots of data range options available for supervisors in here. The next field that you can actually see is where we can actually select the fields itself. Now, there are many different ways that you can select these fields. And one of the points that I would say here is that you'll see at the top of each of one of these field types, there is a filter type as well. On one of these images, you'll see it will say all, and on the other one, it will say chat. That filter type can be changed from chat to email, but also you can also look at information on the agent, so how long they're actually logging in for. So all that information is in here. Again, what I would say at this point is just select the fields which are applicable for your department, your team, to get that information that you actually need here. So it's very easy to select these data points in each of these fields, and as I say, make sure you use the filter to get that information in place as well. So also, if you want to have selection of different fields in each department, you can do that. Remember that if you're looking at reports, we can make sure that the information you're looking at is also applicable for your department. So you're only getting that information back out for you, which is relevant at this point. Fields, again, the other key thing here, as I mentioned, even on the real-time data piece, is just select those fields which are relevant for the reporting metrics that you need to process. If you have hundreds of different fields in here, just because there's lots available, that report is going to get big for and be obviously made bigger for you. And then to try and decipher exactly what's taking place is really hard for you to manage. We want you to get the key reporting metrics that you can out of this screen to move forward. The next data field in here is grouping by, and you can group by, and this is something else which I don't typically see being used very often, but you can group by agent, by service line, by date, by department. And the one that I've highlighted on the screen more than anything is a date group by function. At the very bottom of the screen, I don't know if you've all maybe seen this, but you can use this option as well. So if you wanted to see hour by hour trends and you wanted the date function on the top image, I should say, to start off with, you'll see that I've actually selected date function as well against this queue data. That then allows me to select the bottom option, which is the date group by function. So I've selected hour. I could then run that report against my service lines to see an hour by hour trend of how many customers are maybe coming in and how many chats I've actually done. You can do exactly the same as well as a mailbox standard. So it allows you to group by date and provides a bit more granular information for each of these reports. You can also order by, so if you want ascending, descending, And then there are other options as well. So for example, if you just don't want to have any of these null tables within there, just tick the box, click OK, and then this report will run. There are also different style options available for you as well at this point. There's a couple on my screen. Again, these are just sample reports, just to give you a brief view of what we can put in place. But you'll see from these two reports that I'm not overdoing the information pieces that are actually in place here. And we can make sure that the data is relevant again for your team. Now, best practice would say here is that once we're happy with these reports, you can obviously export them. You can save these reports. If you do save them, make sure that my best practice would be to make sure that you save them to a folder where your other team members can get to that information. If you save it to a personal folder, it's typically harder for the rest of your team to get to those information pieces. So if you do that, it makes it easier for everyone else to grab that information, especially if you're maybe on vacation or you're just away from that office for that day. It just makes it easier for the rest of your team to get that detail. But also, I don't have a screenshot of it. You can schedule these reports as well. So the scheduling report option allows you to make sure that you receive these on a daily basis at a time of your convenience, and they'll be emailed across to you as well. So historical data, here's a couple of points here. Make sure you know what your KPIs are. Track volume, so the goal is here is to track volume of chat, email, and monitor SLAs. Obviously, there are 4 big SLAs that we monitor in each of those, in chat and email. There's time before it actually gets to you with regards to a chat session. So how long should it actually be for the customer waiting in queue? And then we have the response as well of a chat when they're actually connected to an agent. So they're 2 SLAs that we've got there. On the email side of things, we monitor how long from entry to exit of those emails, but also we monitor the SLA of time to respond, again, once that agent has actually picked up those emails. So a couple of tips that you can see on my screen here. Create and save with a name that everyone will understand. So obviously it's easy to pick up those information pieces. Schedule the reports to receive them automatically and set SLAs for specific queues and mailboxes. Again, you can do this at a queue level, so for service lines, and you can do this at a mailbox level as well. So make sure they're applicable for each of those to get the best reported metrics you can from them. And then the last point in here, very much like the real-time data, is to pick fields that are relevant for you. Not all fields will be necessary to your business. Again, it goes back to that goal of tracking volume of chat and email to monitor those SLAs. And the image there is just to say that obviously data is king. We want to make sure that we're giving you the correct information pieces so that you can supply them back into your business areas. 2 other slides that I've got is historical data, and these are just slides on typically what I see most of our customers look at with regards to the data points. So here's kind of the top 6 that I see for email, so emails responded to. The number of follow-up emails is also a good one, so how many emails are entering that have already had a response back from them. Average email response time and % of emails within an agent service level, and the number of emails within a service level as well. On the chat side of things, there's 2 points at the very top of the session here. Chat sessions completed and sessions completed. You would think they're the same, but they're not. So chat sessions completed will actually look at all entry points of chat, but if they're a transfer chat, it will also go against that figure. So typically what I would recommend is to look at the number of sessions completed, because this is the number of sessions completed as in they come in and then they actually have an interaction, and then that's the end of that chat, is ended at those points. Also, time in chat sessions, average chat session duration, average wait time in service line, and the number of sessions within an SLA. And the other point I mentioned earlier on to this is chat disposition code report. So make use of that. It's a very good report to show you the type of chat that you're getting into your business area. Now, you may have seen this point last week when we had this information area sent across to you. But the reason why I'm just showing you on this screen now is because surveys are still key. They give you essential feedback from your customers. So I'm not going to push these slides too much, but the point here is that I think that, again, they're very much underused, and they're really good for you to understand the customers' coming into a chat session, because they can be highly customized. You can make sure that they're targeted surveys, they're configurable questions, and they're obviously optimized for mobile as well. So the information that they can actually supply are key for your business areas. I would suggest having a look at them if you're not already using those today. The next area is contact center utilization tools. So a couple of other slides that I've just put together here is just to show you that email and chat search can also be used to ensure that you're getting more information pieces, because historical and real-time information is obviously the key areas here. But you can also look at this area, so email and chat search, to make sure that you're looking at the type of queries that are coming into the business, but also to gauge the quality of service that you're offering by looking at the responses to each of those. Email and chat search, you can also do this by department, agent service line, and you'll see to the right-hand side of the screen here all the information areas that you can actually have to hand to run a search on. Also, Agent Activity Monitor. The Agent Activity Monitor, again, is something which I usually see hidden away, but this is really useful to understand training and also resource management. So if you wanted to, you can look at a certain department and agents logging in to see when they're logging in and all the dates and timestamps available for them. So they can also look at trends to understand when they pick up a majority of emails and chats, but also to monitor login events to resource it correctly, as I mentioned at the top of this point. Knowledge reporting is next. The knowledge area, again, there's a number of reports which are key in here. There are, on the right-hand side of my screen, a number of reports which are available. This could be based on articles reports, unanswered reports, visitor reports, article hit reports, and so on and so forth that you can see on my screen. Article reports will give you the number of article hits that you're actually getting in place, but there are a number of key areas that you can also see in there. So, for example, when your article was actually created, the number of hits, and if you have the concept of, for those familiar, of the thumbs up, thumbs down, you can also see the number of ratings against that. And if it gets a thumbs up, you'll also see a useful figure in that top report. But the two key reports that I would actually mention in here, which I think are essential, is also the unanswered report and also the search report. So unanswered report will actually give you information of data that your customers are looking for, and it's not actually coming back with any information. And also the actual search report will give you what they're actually searching for and the articles they're actually clicking on. So again, in this slide, what we can actually see here is how do you actually measure success within the KB. So the goal here is to understand which content is being surfaced and which data is useful and needs to be tweaked. A few tips here: keep on top of the reports, look as often as possible, because with regards to content and the way that knowledge is served, is that content, we generally say that content is king. But without these reports, it's hard to understand those data points as well. So please try and keep on top of the reports that are actually in there. I'm not saying you need to look at them every single day with regards to having to log in and go through every single report. But if you can spend 30 minutes a day, 45 minutes a day to look at even the feedback reports or those unanswered reports, I think you'll be able to change those content areas to make sure that the articles are still relevant for your customers. Now, for you that are familiar, for those of you that are familiar with Concierge, you would have probably seen, or you'll probably understand that we do have something which is available which allows your customers to engage online by their means. So they can select the ability to chat, to select self-service, but also to send an email into the business. And with this, that's actually brought a number of new reports available with the Concierge product itself. On my screen, what you'll see here is what that actually brings as a basis. This report is, or these reports are based on the engagements themselves. So with regards to how many chat invites you're actually sending out to a customer, but also this is more about conversion data as well now. So for example here, we can look at events in which a visitor completes a transaction. We can also look at uplift as well. So the change in value of a completed transaction. So if they go into a chat session and then they have a conversation they then decide to purchase another item due to that conversation itself taking place. We can also then look at that uplift figure as well as one of those relevant things, as I call them, on this screen here. So there's a number of different reports that we do have available here as well. It also comes with a number of reports with regards to dashboard data. Now this dashboard data, these metrics that you can see on my screen, are again key to understand the rules that are actually firing for your customers. So for example, on here, what you'll see is unengaged conversion values, engaged values, uplift values, and also engaged by which channel. So we do have a number of reports in here. Now, again, I'm not going to go through each of these today, but I just wanted to give you a sense of all the different reports that we do have available within our Concierge product as well. So within here, what you can see on my screen at the moment is a chat dashboard. So if you wanted to look at conversion count because they're having a chat, you can see that we've got different ways to supply this information. We can do exactly the same again for KB data. So if you're providing an article to a customer, they're reading that information and they're going through that transaction, again, we can make sure that that data is being pulled into the Moxie system for you to get the reporting metrics out of the system as well. We can also show you rule conversion data. So if there's particular rules that you're looking, so on my screen at the moment, the rules where it says rule name, and underneath there you'll see a number of different rules. Rather than that being a rule 423 or having a number, that would be a specific rule name that you would set up. And then against each one of those rules, you'd be able to see how successful that rule is firing for your customers so that you could understand the value against each one of those rules taking place. I mentioned that I'm not going to go through all these, but these will be available on a slide. So at any point you need any of this data information, we can supply this to you as well. But you can see here that there's lots of information, snippets that you can have a look at to make sure that you're engaging with your customers at the right time, but also showing worth, showing that you're performing with those ROIs and KPIs that you need to make sure that the tool's actually working for you. You'll also see here, though, that we do have a report for chat agent value. So we can even do this at an agent level. So you can see the success of these agents. So you can see at the very top here an agent name, and we can also see that conversion value in place. Now, I'm not going to go into this in any more detail, but I'll just go through these very quickly and skip through to the next section because we're running out of time here. So concierge reporting. This is obviously more focused on sales data, but also helping you understand the rules that are actually triggering events on your web pages themselves. So the goal is reporting on success, and the tips here are look at your success criteria to know which reports are needed. Do this as early as possible because then we can help you figure out which reports are essential for you to make sure that we're proving the worth within your business. Understand the missed chat opportunity report, staffing and open hours. We do have a report in here which will show you missed chats. So if you don't have agents logged in, or maybe they're just very busy, they're at their capacity, we can see how many rules should be triggering for your customers if there was availability. So it will actually show you rule named 1, if there was an agent signed in or the service line was open, it will show you the potential number of chats that you could have actually triggered if you had that availability. And the last point in here is dedicate someone to reporting each day, and this goes really across the board. It doesn't need to be 8 hours a day, but if you can get into the reports and have a look at them, as I mentioned earlier on, for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, then you're going to get a lot more from these data reports to prove that it's actually working for you as well. Now, the last point on here is event broadcasting, and just to talk on this very briefly, we also have event broadcasting available. So typically what we see here is that when we released Concierge, we created a bunch of reports that we thought would be very useful. But what we found out is that customers also wanted very specific types of information in a certain format. So what event broadcasting does is it actually allows the companies to supply or use existing analytics tools and actually merge into the Concierge data suite. So Omniture or Google Analytics, we can also provide data into each of those areas. Again, these slides are available. Now, there are, as I mentioned, a lot of information pieces in here, and it's very near to our time being up here. But I just want to leave a minute here for any questions. As I say, if you have anything, then please do put them into the chat box. Okay, I haven't seen any questions from anyone, but thank you very much for attending, and thank you very much for attending the series from everyone here. Thank you. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.